Hi guys, it's Jan from Melbourne Foodforest. Today I want to talk tomatoes, and this year we want to take you on the journey of how we grow our tomatoes from tiny little babies to potting them up and then planting them out in the garden, and hopefully be able to share with you the journey of all our epic tomato harvests in summer. So I'm just standing outside our shed, which is our potting station and where all the magic happens. So let me show you what's going on right now. So this might not look like much yet, but this is the beginning of something wonderful. These are our first lot of tomatoes. I think there's about 20 varieties here. Last year we planted 30, so there's still a few more varieties to plant. I started these about a month ago, just indoors, and these ones I started about a month and a half ago. And you can see that there's not a huge difference between the ones that I started a little bit later and a bit earlier, a few weeks difference, but not that much difference in size, because as the weather warms up, the later ones really do catch up very quickly. And we start all of ours in individual punnets, and tomatoes, you can see I've sown quite a few into each because they really don't mind being transplanted. And you'll learn this yourself over time, which plants need to be sown single per pod like this. So like beans in particular, they hate root disturbance, whereas tomatoes, they don't seem to resent it at all. So you can sow more than one seed per little punnet, as we have done here. And you want to sow more than one because sometimes, one snaps or it doesn't go well. You need backups. So you can see here we've got one in each little pot, and some of these are almost ready for potting on. So let me show you a few things. Now you can see firstly that the stems of the plants, just the stems here, looking nice, strong and healthy. So what we've done is we've had to bring out this tray from indoors, inside to outside each day to make sure that they get heaps and heaps of direct sunlight and they don't become leggy. For tomatoes though, it's not as big an issue, because if they become leggy, you can plant it deep as you transplant it, and I'll show you that in a second because some of these are ready for transplanting. The other thing you'll notice with the stems on all of them is that they're purple. Purple stems tells you that they've been hardened up outside. So trust me, when you first plant them indoors, and if you haven't taken them outside yet, the stems you'll find are green. And some of the tomato seedlings that you buy from the nursery will actually have green stems because they've been greenhouse raised and they haven't been brought outside. So you'll need to first bring it outside gradually, a bit more each day, to acclimatize your seedlings. Don't plant them straight into the ground until you see that they've got purple stems and that they're really hardened and used to the weather outdoors, because really they're just babies. And if you throw them out into the garden and let them fend on their own, they can go into shock, particularly if the soil's too cold, which it still is in our climate at the moment in Melbourne. So I wouldn't plant any tomatoes directly into the ground just yet at the very start of spring. I'd wait a bit longer, keep sizing these up until they're big and healthy and ready to go in the ground. And so I'll show you what we're going to do now. So the ones that I want to size up are these. These were the ones that were planted a bit earlier, and ignore that thing that says chamomile. I'm reusing labels. It's indigo pear, one of our favorite varieties from last season. Gorgeous crimson purple colored pears that are really, really productive. So this was the first set of seeds I planted, basically as a test to see if the soil was warm enough to germinate tomatoes. It was. Then I planted the rest 2 weeks later. So these are a bit more progressed, you can tell, because they have their first set of leaves, their first true leaves is what I mean. So these are the baby leaves that grow, and then these are the true leaves. So once these leaves start to grow, you can think about transplanting, but you might not need to yet. So I'm deciding to transplant because I can see the earlier leaves are turning a little bit yellow, which means it's getting somewhat hungry. So I'm going to transplant that into a bigger pot. Now I'm also going to do this set because you can see a few too many germinated here. had too much success. So these will need to be transplanted as well. And you can see they've got their first true leaves as well. And their baby leaves are humongous. So this variety is Siberian. It's a cold tolerant variety, hence it's really caught up to these because it grows well in the cold, hence its name, Siberian, and it's a smaller determinate variety. So these ones we usually get fruit from earliest in the season and latest as well because they're so cold tolerant. And so that's produced there's quite a few seedlings in there. So I'm gonna move that into a bigger container, and then also I'm gonna do these two. This is Dark Galaxy, again a really vigorous variety, and look how many germinated. I mean, I just put what that felt like was a few seeds in there, and I've got heaps and heaps of seedlings. So Dark Galaxy, and this one, Striped Broma. This was one of our earliest producing varieties last year. Really vigorous, and so that's got off to such a strong start. You can see these have really caught up to this one, and the rest of these I think I'm going to leave a bit longer. Maybe I'll do this one too. 8 ball. This is a beautiful black cherry, largish cherry tomato. Really stunning. Quite a rare variety, quite hard to find in Australia. We will have seeds for these up on our website later because you can't get them here. So we're really trying to raise them and save our own seeds so that we can share with people in Australia, because it's very hard for us to import seeds here with our strict quarantine. Which other ones? I reckon this one's Brad's Atomic Grape. Cool name, isn't it? They're really kind of cosmic looking oval shaped tomatoes. So I think the ones where I've got heaps in one pot and they've got their first true set of leaves, I think I'm gonna size up. And you can see even the first set of leaves look different on each of them. Like this indigo pear actually has purple colored leaves, purple foliage. They have different foliage, and this one's got really thin leaves. But yeah, once they develop, you'll be able to see more differences between them. And which one, yeah, I'm just looking. Sometimes when their roots poke out the bottom, not seeing a lot of roots on this one, even though this one's in a teensy tiny pot. So I think the rest of these I'm going to leave for another week, let them get a bit bigger, and I'm going to pot these ones up. I'll show you how we do that. Okay, what you need is some top quality potting mix. Try what works for you. This is the mix that I've been using for about, the past 5 to 10 years, and I've tried every mix on the market, and this is what works for us, and it's great value as well. Given that things flourish in it, it's worth paying a little bit more. It's actually not that much more expensive than, a really cheap and nasty potting mix. So this is what we use. Put on some gloves. Do this in a well-ventilated area, so we do it outside the shed. Got a nice scoop, and just scoop some out like this into a tub. Now these are worm castings from our 4 worm farms. Actually, we've got 5 now, an in-ground one in the front. But you can see how wonderfully fudgy and rich this is. This is a nutrient-dense, packed pocket of fertilizer, which we give to young seedlings. We give them a boost. So I'm going to keep scooping out more potting mix so that I have enough, and then we'll move up to the potting table. Now, we're at the potting table, and you can see that cool big leaf gourd there with a cool backdrop. Okay, let me just show you what I'm going to do. So, current size of punnet, pretty small. They're about 5 centimeters square that I've used, and I'm going to go up in size to a 10 centimeter pot like this. So you can see the size difference. It's going to give it heaps more growing room for all of these. So I'm going to put them all in one. I'm not going to bother separating at this stage just because it's heaps more work. I'm going to have to write 10 more labels for each plant, and it's going to take up a lot of space and trays. I'm just going to chuck them all in here so that they don't get hungry and start competing with each other. This is going to give them another few weeks more growing room, and once they each have a lot more developed roots, that's when I'm going to separate them out into individual pots before planting out into the garden. So for us, potting up our tomatoes, it's a 3-stage process. Go from the small one to this whole group goes into this medium-sized pot, and then once they fill out this pot, then the individuals each get their own pot about this size, and then this goes into the garden because they're going to be big, strong and healthy by then. Okay, so I'm going to get some top quality potting mix. You can obviously make your own mix or use what works for you. This works for us. It's easy, it's no fuss. Put some potting mix into there, so fill that up in the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. Now I'm going to grab a pinch of worm castings from our pre-prepared tub. So this, you know, each year, about 2 or 3 times a year, I do a harvest from our various worm farms, store them up in tubs like this. You can see I've got another 4 tubs. No, not Greek yogurt, worm castings, 4 tubs of goodness ready to go, particularly you know, getting it ready for spring and summer where we're going to be planting out lots of seedlings. Oh, that one got a bit of rainwater in it. It's quite wet. So having that ready to go just makes your life so much easier. So you can see here, that's some of the potting mix that I've put in. And you add a generous pinch of worm castings. So little seedlings, especially tomatoes, don't need too much nitrogen-rich fertilizer because that is going to promote heaps of leafy growth, and it's going to delay your fruit set and may even reduce your fruit set. So these worm castings, while they're rich, they're very gentle as well. They're not supercharged in nitrogen. They're actually a really complete, balanced, gentle feed for them to get them going. Now, okay, I'm going to see if I can do this with one hand. Apologise for the shoddy camera work because I'm having to do this one-handed. Alright, so gently tip your seedlings out, which I have. You can see that holds together really nicely, and you can see they haven't really filled this out dramatically. It's not desperately calling out for repotting, but it is a good time to repot because tomatoes grow fast. And you can see individually their roots are not huge, so if I were to separate them out, look, they'd still survive, but just don't need to just yet. I'm going to pop them in here and just push that down a bit. And tomatoes can be planted deeply, so not every plant can. Some plants, if you plant them too deeply, the stem actually rots and the plant dies. So you don't want to do that for everything. But tomato, basil, pumpkin, things like that, they shoot roots. Anything that shoots roots along its stem, you can actually plant deeper than what you had originally. And so with tomatoes, roots shoot all along that stem. So you actually do, in the second potting, you can see here, I want to plant it deeper than what I originally had it in here, because that's going to encourage the plant to put out more roots, have a healthier, stronger, bigger root system. So make sure you are planting these lower. Let's just take that around a bit. Now I'm gonna put my gloves back on, and I'm gonna top it up with potting mix. Doesn't matter if they're flopped over, doesn't matter at all. You know why? Because that actually creates more surface area under the soil, which is going to lead to more roots because we have more stems under the soil. It's really that simple. Like, you don't need to make them stand up. Don't need to do anything fancy at this stage. They won't look pretty for a few days, but eventually these plants will find the sun again and stand upright, and it's going to be beautiful. And then I'm just going to dropped potting mix, pick that up, a potting table, and that's done. So that one's done. Dark Galaxy, potted. I didn't have to do too much work. I'm looking for something simple at this stage, and so I'm going to grab, bear with me, So I've just grabbed a tray now from under the potting table. Yes, we've been trying to be organized and get our potting set up organized. You can see all our pots here of different shapes, sizes, makeshift, recycled, all sorts of things here. Get a tray, and once I've done all of these, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. But once I've done all of these, put them on the tray, water them, and put them in a shady spot for a day or two. Just, because once you disturb their roots, you don't want to expose them to more stress of the harsh sun as well. So we're going to put them somewhere shady for a few days. Once they've recovered, then they get good to go back into full sun. And I'm actually going to pop these into our greenhouse after they settle back in. All right, let me finish this and show you the final result. Okay, that's another pot done. And once you do them, give them a shake around. You might even want to press down the soil a bit, but once you water too, that will settle down and mean there are no air pockets. But I'm getting this deliciously tomato scent just from their foliage as I'm working with it, which is getting me really excited for summer because we adore tomatoes. So really looking forward to having these on the way. And I was saying with all our pots down here, they're all recycled. They're all ones that either we've salvaged from hard rubbish, a nursery, or from plants that we previously purchased. And down there too, you can see got different cups and all sorts of different things. So you can save up lots of things. You don't need to buy new. You definitely don't want to buy new for these because people throw these away. It's really sad. If you just ask around, sometimes nurseries have pot recycling services where you can go pick up some pots that people have gotten rid of, or you can ask around on your local swap group. There'll definitely be some pots floating around. You can also use old yogurt containers, even these are the big ones, but there's smaller ones too. So lots of different things you can repurpose to size up your seedlings with. Look, I'm done. I've got 6 beautiful pots of goodness. And don't be alarmed if your tomatoes look smaller than before you repotted them. It's because we want that. We want them to be under the soil. We want them to look shorter so that they can grow more roots underneath and become healthier plants. So they actually look smaller than the ones over there because they look a lot taller now. Made these shrink. And I've got this whole bunch of pots now, which is just wonderful for me because I'm running out of ones this size. So now I'm going to use these to germinate some of my other summer produce like zucchinis and pumpkins, which I haven't started yet. Those I like to start a bit later because they're so fast growing that you really need to get them into the soil pretty quickly or they get hungry. And they're so fast growing that later planted ones catch up to the earlier planted ones. So I don't really bother planting them until spring. So now I'm going to start germinating those. If you haven't germinated your tomatoes yet, it's not too late at all. We can plant tomato seeds from all through spring, even into summer. You can still grow new ones, and it's actually a good idea to stagger your tomato planting so that you have some later producing plants, because tomato plants are the healthiest and most vigorous and productive when they're young. So you might want to, so we'll do a batch in spring. There's still some I haven't even started germinating yet, as I said, and we might also plant some late so that we get late season tomatoes, because sometimes like some of your plants aren't as healthy and they finish up early, so you want backups. So don't stress at all if you haven't even got your seeds in. There's heaps of time, and they will really catch up quite quickly. For us, our goal is to get tomatoes by Christmas, even if it's small cherry ones, because we just adore them. Plus, our garden is just so shady in winter that we don't plant a lot of those really huge brassicas. Generally we don't plant a lot, so we do actually have the bed space for tomatoes quite early on. So just go with what works in your garden. Don't stress and don't compare yourself to others, because everyone's different. If you've been busy and you need to buy seedlings from the nursery, go for it, do it. There's nothing beats homegrown, so don't feel guilty that you've got to do things a certain way. I'm just showing you what we're able to do this year. If anything, we've planted later this year than usual as well. So go with what works for you. And The other thing I was going to mention is some commonly asked questions. One of them is, why do you bother planting them into small containers like this first? Why not just plant straight into seeds into a pot this big? Well, you could, and I think it would work because tomatoes are tough. But the reason why we don't do it is pots like this, they're so big. They take up lots of space. So you can see that in the space of that tray where I germinated 20 types of tomatoes. If I had used pots this big, I would have needed 3 to 4 of those trays. And if I'm putting that indoors on our kitchen table, it's going to take up a lot of space. Or if you're going to use heat mats inside, you're going to need 4 heat mats, like 1 per tray. So you want small because it doesn't take up much space. That's number 1. 2, the bigger the pot, the more soil. And the more soil, the more water it holds. So when you just have seeds in there, teensy tiny little seeds at the top, the seeds don't really need that much water to germinate. As long as they're damp on top, they're not actually using any of the water down here because they don't have roots yet. So it's actually all wasted space, and it can increase the risk of overwatering and like the whole soil going soggy and your seeds rotting and being cold as well. So a smaller pot like that is warmer, heats up quicker. Big pot like this takes ages to heat up, warm up. Seeds will take longer to germinate, and there's a risk that they could rot. That's a big issue, particularly for bean seeds, I find, which are quite prone to rotting in cold, wet temperatures. Yeah, so that's a few reasons why we use small punnets and keep moving up. So I'm going to put these in the shade, and I'll show you where I pop them, and let's give them a water. Okay, I've popped our tomatoes behind our shed wall, which doesn't get a lot of sun, a little bit, but not too much. Because the tray at the bottom doesn't collect water, I've just put it over, a garden bed so that we don't lose the water. And I'm just going to gently water them in. Could be a bit more gentle than that, but it's really hard with one hand. All right. Okay, I've gently watered that in really well. The water's running out through the bottom, and we'll leave it here in this shady spot for a few days. You can see I've got other things like propagation and things here, and we also use the area behind our water tank, which is quite shady as well, to propagate and raise seedlings. So that's our first 6 varieties of tomatoes up and running, and they will really take off quite quickly. Tomatoes are such fast growers once the weather warms up. As I said, we'll leave it here for about a couple of days. Once they're acclimatized, I'm going to move them into our greenhouse. Got shelves here, I'll show you, which is pretty empty at the moment. So, as I said, we're running a bit behind, haven't quite gotten onto all our summer produce, but yeah, that's going to be rows and rows of tomatoes here, which would be great. We've got a few other things going on here, lots of Egyptian walking onions. So some of these need to be planted out, so I'm going to go do that. That's chamomile, that's been raised over winter, that's done really well, that's going to go out. And lots of our overwintered chilies as well. So the greenhouse will come back to life over summer, a bit bare over winter, but yeah, this will be brimming with summer seedlings, which will then plant out mid to late spring into the garden, and sometimes even early summer. So I hope you found that useful. So that's all I need to do today with my tomatoes. I might actually germinate a few more varieties. So I'm gonna fill up those little pods that I've emptied and plant a few more varieties of tomatoes and some pumpkins and zucchinis, which should germinate quite quickly, because like today is really feeling like spring. A really warm day. It's a top of I think over 20. So I hope you found that useful. We'll keep taking you along our tomato journey as we go along in summer. So thank you for watching. As always, if you enjoyed, please remember to like this video, share with your friends, and subscribe to our channel to help support our work. Thanks again.